There's a certain kind of person who moves through this digital world like a ghost. They scroll through your posts, watch your stories, sometimes even like your photos, but if you check their profile, it's almost empty. Maybe a profile picture from 3 years ago, perhaps a handful of posts scattered across months or even years. You might know someone like this. Maybe you are someone like this. And while the rest of the world seems desperate to document every meal, every sunset, every fleeting thought, these people remain mysteriously quiet in the loudest space humanity has ever created. We live in an age where silence feels suspicious, where not sharing feels like hiding, where privacy has somehow become synonymous with having something to hide. But what if I told you that the people who choose not to post aren't broken, antisocial, or missing out? What if their silence reveals something profound about human psychology that the rest of us have forgotten? Today we're diving deep into the hidden psychology behind people who don't post on social media. Because beneath that quiet digital presence lies a complex web of motivations, protective mechanisms, and ways of being that challenge everything we think we know about connection, authenticity, and self-worth in the modern world. Let's start with what researchers have discovered. Studies show that approximately 30 to 40% of social media users are what psychologists call lurkers. They consume content but rarely contribute. They observe without performing, they absorb without broadcasting. And contrary to what you might assume, this isn't necessarily a sign of shyness or social anxiety. In fact, many of these digital observers score higher on traits like emotional independence, self-restraint, and something fascinating that psychologists call internal validation. Internal validation means your sense of worth doesn't depend on external applause. It means you don't need an audience to feel alive. Think about that for a moment. In a world where every experience seems to require documentation, where every achievement needs witnesses, where every emotion demands expression, these people have developed something increasingly rare: the ability to exist fully without needing proof of that existence. Research from the University of Central Florida found that introverts primarily use social platforms for information seeking, not broadcasting. They treat the digital world like a vast library rather than a stage. They're not performing, they're learning. They're studying human behavior, absorbing perspectives, gathering information. From their vantage point, social media becomes less about self-expression and more about understanding the world around them. But here's where it gets really interesting. Neuroscience tells us that people who avoid posting often have what researchers call an observer personality orientation. These are analytical, empathetic individuals who prefer to understand before they engage. Their brains are wired differently. They process information more deeply, reflect more thoroughly, and make decisions more deliberately. They don't react immediately to stimuli. They absorb, analyze, then choose their response. This connects to something psychologists call high internal stimulation. While others need external validation to feel satisfied, these individuals generate enough mental activity internally. Their thoughts, imagination, and emotional processing provide sufficient stimulation. They don't need the dopamine hit of likes and comments because their internal world is rich enough to sustain them. Think about the last time you posted something online. What were you hoping for? Validation, connection, proof that your experience mattered. Now imagine someone who doesn't need that external confirmation. Someone who can have a beautiful experience, process it fully, and file it away as meaningful without needing anyone else to witness or approve it. That's not disconnection. That's psychological self-sufficiency. But it goes deeper than individual psychology. These non-posters often recognize something that constant sharers miss. The performative nature of social media can actually interfere with authentic experience. When you're constantly thinking about how an experience will translate into content, part of your attention is always divided. You're living the moment and simultaneously curating it for an audience that may or may not care. Studies on social comparison reveal another crucial insight. Even passive browsing can trigger what researchers call social comparison fatigue. Repeated exposure to others' curated lives creates subtle but persistent self-doubt. The people who choose not to post often recognize this psychological toll and actively protect themselves from it. They understand that their mental energy is finite and choose to invest it in real-world connections and personal growth rather than digital performance. This isn't about being antisocial or technophobic. Many of these individuals are deeply social in offline contexts. They form meaningful relationships, engage in rich conversations, and contribute significantly to their communities. They've simply recognized that authentic connection rarely happens through a screen. They prefer depth over breadth, quality over quantity, presence over performance. Their silence isn't empty, it's intentional. It's a conscious choice to live life on their own terms rather than according to the rhythms and demands of algorithmic attention. And perhaps most importantly, it's a form of psychological boundary that protects something increasingly precious in our hyper-connected world. The right to exist without explanation, to experience without exhibition, to be human without documentation. What's fascinating is that these digital observers often possess something that heavy posters have lost: the ability to be fully present. When you're not constantly scanning for content opportunities, when you're not mentally composing captions while living your life, something shifts. Colours seem richer, conversations feel fuller, time moves differently. You're not experiencing life through the lens of how it will appear to others. You're experiencing it as it actually is. Psychologists have identified this as a form of mindful engagement. While others are performing their lives, these individuals are living them. They're not thinking about angles or lighting or the perfect caption. They're absorbed in the actual moment. And research shows this kind of present moment awareness correlates strongly with higher life satisfaction and lower anxiety levels. But there's another layer to this psychology that runs even deeper. Many people who avoid posting have developed what researchers call psychological ownership over their experiences. They understand that the moment you share something deeply personal, it stops being entirely yours. It becomes subject to interpretation, judgment, misunderstanding. It enters the realm of public opinion where its meaning can be distorted or dismissed. There's something profoundly protective about keeping certain experiences sacred. Think about the most meaningful moments of your life, the quiet conversations that changed everything, the moments of breakthrough or healing, the times when you felt most authentically yourself. How many of those happened in front of an audience? How many needed witnesses to be real? People who choose digital silence often understand this instinctively. They know that not everything meaningful needs to be shared, that some truths are too precious for public consumption. That privacy isn't about hiding, it's about preserving the sanctity of experience. This connects to what psychologists call emotional regulation through boundaries. These individuals have learned to create healthy separations between their inner world and outer performance. They don't need external validation to process their emotions or validate their experiences. They've developed internal systems for meaning-making that don't require an audience. Research shows this kind of emotional independence is linked to higher resilience and better mental health outcomes. When your sense of self isn't dependent on how others respond to your life, you're less vulnerable to the emotional volatility that comes with social media engagement. You're not riding the highs and lows of digital approval. Your emotional state remains more stable because it's internally regulated. But perhaps most importantly, these digital minimalists often recognize something that our culture has forgotten: that constant sharing can actually diminish the depth of experience. When you're always broadcasting your life, you start living for the broadcast rather than for yourself. Your experiences become content rather than life. Your relationships become performances rather than connections. The people who choose silence have often stepped outside this cycle entirely. They've remembered what it feels like to do something meaningful without needing to tell anyone about it, to achieve something without needing applause, to feel joy without needing witnesses. And in a world that increasingly equates visibility with value, this kind of psychological independence is revolutionary. Their silence isn't a withdrawal from life. It's a return to authentic living. It's choosing substance over spectacle, depth over display, being over seeming. And maybe, just maybe, they understand something the rest of us are still learning. That the most profound human experiences happen in the spaces between words, in the quiet moments that no camera can capture, in the connections that exist beyond the reach of any algorithm. In our next exploration, we'll uncover how this digital silence affects their relationships and what it reveals about the future of human connection in an increasingly connected world. So the next time you encounter someone who never posts, who remains mysteriously quiet in our digital cacophony, don't assume they're missing something. Don't pity their apparent invisibility or question their engagement with life. Instead, recognize that they might understand something profound that the rest of us have forgotten. That presence doesn't require proof. That meaning doesn't need an audience. that the deepest truths about human experience often happen in the spaces no algorithm can reach. These digital ghosts aren't hiding from life, they're protecting it. They're choosing authenticity over approval, depth over display, being over seeming. And in a world that increasingly mistakes noise for significance, their silence becomes a form of wisdom. They remind us that not everything needs to be shared to be real, that not everything meaningful requires witnesses, and that sometimes the most radical act in our hyper-connected age is simply choosing to exist without explanation. Perhaps they're not the ones missing out. Perhaps they're the ones who remember what we've lost, the ability to live fully in moments that belong only to us, to find meaning that doesn't depend on external validation, and to be human without needing documentation. In their quiet observation and intentional silence, they offer us a mirror, reflecting back what authentic living might look like when we stop performing and start being present to our own lives.